Interviewing people is something that I've wanted to do on this channel for a while. I did a few interviews back when I first started the channel, and I wanted to start having more interviews and talking with more people so I can get to know people better from different walks of life, different content creators, different developers, YouTubers, kind of have a get to know you chat and just see where the conversation takes us. I'm going to chat with people for about an hour to an hour and a half about whatever they want to talk about, understand what they do, and maybe hear a little bit of their come up story or what they're interested in now and some of the cool stuff that they might be building or some of the cool stuff that they might have already done in the past. And I really just want to do this because I enjoy talking to people and hearing different experiences. With that being said, this is going to be my first official interview where I talk with Gary Simon from the Design Course YouTube channel. Gary has been on YouTube for a really long time. If you've ever looked up UI UX design, you've definitely come across some of his videos or some of his courses. We get into a lot of different stuff in this conversation. We talk about UI UX design and development. We talk about entrepreneurship and growing a YouTube channel. We talk about addiction, and we even talk about psychedelics. I really hope that you enjoy our conversation, and if you want to see more videos like this or are interested in me talking with specific people and having certain guests on for interviews, let me know who you want me to try to reach out to in the comments below, and I'll try to see if they're interested in coming on and having a chat with me. With that being said, let's get into that interview right now. Go ahead and introduce you, the OG UI UX design course YouTube channel, Gary Simon here. I'll let you just tell the audience who may not know you who you are and what you do, and then we'll just start chatting from there.
Yeah. So I run Design Course YouTube channel. That's where people mostly know me from. My first video there was uploaded from 2010. I started taking it seriously in like 2014 after watching a Gary Vaynerchuk video, like where he did a video every day for like 3 years for his wine buy business. And I was like, I'm gonna do that for my tutorial business. And so I got to 100 days, but tutorials are a lot more involved than just sipping wine. That sounds fun. I do that every day. But anyhow, yeah. So the channel grew obviously a lot after that, just putting in consistent work and stuff. And then outside of the YouTube channel, I have the designcourse.com, which I only recently started to monetize through courses. And so we can kind of get into the more details about kind of how I made money initially and all that. But yeah, I teach UI, UX design and front-end development, mainly just like HTML, CSS, some JavaScript, which I'm getting a little bit more into. So I have two of those niches that I try to follow now as much as possible.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. So would you say that it's more just kind of more UI development on the development side of things? Are you like planning on going deeper into frameworks and heavier JavaScript stuff, or are you kind of going to keep it more like HTML and CSS?
Yeah. So, initially for a long time, probably back in like I want to say 17, 2018, 2019, I was covering Angular of all
Yeah.
things, which is funny because I started really making a lot of money when I started doing that. And then like that kind of got old to me. And so I kind of went back to UI stuff. So I have a channel with over 1 million subscribers, but I broke one of the cardinal rules, which is like, don't go outside your niche too much. And so I have a lot of subscribers, but if I upload a video, I always don't get a ton of views because I'm alienating a portion of my subscribers. So if I do go in the future, like right now, I kind of just like to keep it vanilla JavaScript, just HTML, CSS, and that way I don't have to really focus on learning these frameworks because it's been a while since I've really personally touched anything like I've like never touched React, like very rarely. I touched a lot of Vue. I would probably focus on that if I were to ever do something in the future. But yeah, it would make sense to get into React. I just personally, the whole JSX thing, I didn't like that at all. So I don't know.
It's really funny because you mentioned Angular, and I'm actually back working in an Angular stack, or what will be an Angular
Okay.
stack once it's built out. And before that, I was also working in Angular, and it's just Angular gets a bad rep, like
Yeah.
it's just one of those the framework everyone loves to hate.
Right.
But it's
Right.
not
Right.
that bad. It pays the
No.
bills.
No.
So
No.
to hear you say like you started in Angular, and
Yeah.
all the cool kids want to work in React,
Right.
but
I had like the biggest um in terms of traffic website. It was corsetro.com. That was the brand I was going under at that time. For Angular traffic, like if you typed in Angular 2 tutorial, Angular 4 tutorial, and they skipped 3, Angular 5, like I was number one every time. I had like 10,000 visitors a day, and it was like all Angular stuff.
You're
Uh,
just killing it
yeah,
with SEO for
I
Angular,
was,
huh?
I was, because I would do a video like a crash course, and then I would hand type. We didn't have AI back then. Hand type, the whole written version of the tutorial. So that worked very well actually. And I always kick myself for like just kind of abandoning the website. So now it gets like, I don't know, 300 visitors a day or something like that.
Which is
Yeah.
still, not bad, but in the grand scheme of things, with your other followings and whatnot, it's
Yeah.
probably not worth
Yeah.
maintaining at this point, or
So
trying to
that's
bring
been
it
my
back up.
problem. Yeah, that's been my problem. Like I like being like a full stack dev type person, or at least in the respect of like, doing the UI in Figma and then being able to code it in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then doing some light, integration work. Uh, so yeah, it can bite me, it's fun. But like I said, like, yeah, million subscribers, but my views aren't always the greatest. So if I like whenever I tell somebody if they're going to get into YouTube, just go ahead and really get niched down. A person that's great at this that I know has done very well is Kevin Powell, because he's like pure CSS
Yeah,
only.
he's like the
Yeah,
CSS guy. Like,
yeah,
that's the go-to
yeah.
CSS
That's the
YouTuber.
way to do it.
Yeah, I am struggling as well with kind of being all over the place. Having an existential midlife crisis live on YouTube is always fun. Which, in my mind, I'm like, I'll document some of that stuff. Maybe people will enjoy it, or try to
They
share some
do.
other stuff. And
Yeah,
there's value in it, but I do see when the numbers take a hit because I started doing that stuff. And I'm still up in the air with what I want to do, like
right,
long term on YouTube. And
right,
like, my stuff isn't tutorial based. I can't really see how I would prepare a course with the type of content that I've made so far, and that also wouldn't be kind of like cheesy, right? Because my content's a little bit like motivational, so it's going to be like
right,
the alpha male coder,
right.
get
Yeah,
get your job in programming boot camp course. I don't
yeah.
see myself doing that.
I mean, I browsed around your channel a little bit, and I've watched, like I watched the one addiction video and stuff. And maybe we could talk about that afterwards.
Funny enough, I ended
Super
up
great.
making that one private again. It got way more
Okay.
attention than I wanted, and then I
Okay.
went through like my and I'm happy to talk about it. It's
Okay.
just kind of weird because I was going through an interview process,
Yeah,
and just how things
I
were lined
understand.
up. I started like, purging all the stuff off of my social medias that could maybe rub people
You're
in
right.
the,
I didn't think
the
about
too
that. You're right.
opinionated, kind of like, all right, well, I
Yeah.
was just shit posting on Twitter, and somebody might take that the wrong way, or talk about addiction. And it's a real
Right.
thing that I saw that people really responded to. But at the same time, I was like, oh shit, I don't really want a potential employer seeing this.
You're
And
right. You're right. Yeah, I
so it's
understand. Yeah,
weird.
I understand completely. Yeah. But anyhow, looking at your channel, I was like, I looked at your video you uploaded 6 days ago, and I mean, 170 comments. Like, I rarely ever get that, unless it's a big crash course tutorial or something. And it slowly gets that over time. But yeah, the whole, just being honest and real with people. Sometimes I've tried to do stuff like that, like very rarely. But the times I did, I just tanked. I guess it just sucked or something. I don't
you
have interesting stories,
You
but
know, one thing you did that I really like, it was like it went so, like, it was so underrated and went so unnoticed, was when you did the whole like series. It was like 5 videos or something, when you kind of going with the synth punk
oh
80s,
shit, yeah.
you had the glove, and like that was, I thought those were
Dude,
great. I love those videos. I
I
really enjoyed
it
those.
was funny because I at that time I was taking these Delta 8 gummies, which are these like it's a legal version of
I'm
weed.
familiar.
Yeah,
with
it's a legal version
the
of weed, and I was taking 'em I took it every night, and, like, it just made me, like, a lot more creative, and I was just like and I was having fun, I'm like, I'm high, I'm doing this crazy stuff. I have, like, snakes wrapped around my neck outside in the woods and stuff, and, like, I had
Awesome.
fun with it, but the problem is, like, the views weren't great, which, I kinda sucked. I was hoping it would be like, it'd just kick right off, and then B, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of editing, so I was like,
Yeah.
I really didn't give it enough time, because actually, what's his name from Fireship, he, like, actually wanted to integrate a video
Jeff,
somehow. I
right?
was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I should have freaking yeah, I should have kept continued on with it. Who knows? Maybe in the future.
Yeah, I love his stuff. It's funny when about a year ago, when my channel was kind of on this upward trend, he he shared one of my videos on one of his videos, or gave me a
Okay.
shout out, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And I do this thing where I'm assuming that a lot of YouTubers or people who take YouTube seriously do, where you kind of go down to someone's channel, and you used to be able to sort by like first uploaded or oldest
Yep.
uploads, and
Yep.
then kind of see how they started. And he's also like an Angular guy, which is funny. You
Okay.
mentioned you started as an Angular guy, and
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm technically an Angular guy if I you know
Yeah.
count
Because
which
he
framework
covered
I've
like
worked the most
Firebase
in.
and stuff. Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
and, the
Yeah.
crazy pivot that he made, and, like, such good content that now I'm seeing a
Yeah.
lot of people trying to, like, emulate and
Hmm.
copy his thumbnail style,
Yep.
and it's just it's pretty funny with
Yeah.
the whole YouTube
Yeah,
game,
I
and,
understand. There's a few other YouTubers too, like Hyperplexed, and there's another one. I forget what the other one is. Like, but they were just like blowing up. They kind of like just created an evolution of like presenting tutorial related content. And like for
yeah,
me, I'm dabbling in integrating some of that and having more highly edited. Now the consequence is shorter videos, YouTube videos. But then I, it's a lot more work. Like
yeah,
all the
no,
editing
for
you have to
sure,
do,
for sure,
and
or
like I
money, right? Because then you have to pay outsource the editing, which is
yeah, I mean,
rough
I do it
too.
myself though, but again,
Okay,
that's the time factor that costs me time and
yeah,
it sucks. So
for
yeah,
sure, for sure.
I mean, that's like
It's
Brad Traversy. He's like, he doesn't even want to go that route. He just wants to sit in front and like you do it the old school way that we all do, you know. And
yeah, yeah.
there's value in it, but you know, there's no denying there's tons of views, you know, in
I
short form,
agree.
highly edited format.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially with one thing I've noticed is that while there are a small amount of people, I would say, that actually come to YouTube for like the traditional, I would say, boring air quotes, like
yeah,
tutorials, because people like learning in that structure. A lot of courses and tutorials and classes have been set up in that structure, but for YouTube, that engagement and trying to make boring content entertaining. So like trying to find that, which Fireship I think has done a really good job of
yeah,
finding that entertainment with a boring topic and making it fun and
right,
still insightful, and you learn from it, because like I watch some of my own videos and I'm like, I don't know what the hell someone's gonna take from
right,
that, right? But I watch some like his videos. I always get some good information out of them,
right.
and
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some magic there that's pretty hard to replicate, because
Yes.
I would assume a lot of people would have already by now tried
Yeah.
to do the same thing that he does, but it's just unique to his channel
Yeah.
and his creative process or whatnot.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And that's the thing with like YouTube. It's like for me, you know, for a long time, I had an upward trajectory in terms of views and earnings. And then like the last year and a half or so, especially in the last year, right from this point, I like my earnings, like when my ad revenue went from like an average of like anywhere between 6 to 8 thousand a month, which just from YouTube ads is great. And then it seriously, like I think 2 months ago it was like 2,800. So my views have
it
been, or not necessarily my views, it's been the earnings. And you know, you and I, for those of you who are watching, we're part of this secret society Discord
oh yeah.
server with other YouTube programmer creators or whatever. And like, I probably should hit them up and see like, has everybody's view like earnings been like down the last year or something? Because sometimes there's a correlation that's happening that's outside of our control. But yeah, it's actually kind of gone up since I started covering AI though, because that's the hot topic now.
Yeah, it's finding those
Yeah.
trends. I too saw quite a decline like in November. I would say that's around the time that I started to see it. I also saw people on Reddit from like YouTube subreddits where they
Right.
were also saying that they were seeing that. I also stopped uploading as consistently as I was, which is one thing that I got to give you credit for, man. You are so consistent. It is crazy. Like I remember watching your videos way back when I first started learning how to code, and I was trying to
Mhm.
learn a little bit about design, and I mean that had to be like 2017, and you
Yeah.
pretty much upload like a video a week, right? Like
Y-
every single week.
It's been like 2 videos a week,
Whoa.
consistently. And for a while, like in 2017, 2018, when I started to get sponsorship requests, like, all right, I'm gonna start doing more videos to justify, you know, because I would have a monthly sponsor who would, you know, I'd have like a mention video, and like I would give them 10 videos a month. So, I was uploading, a fair amount, and for a while averaging 4 videos per week. And then that became a little bit too much. So now it's 2 videos per week. That's what I do. That's what I put out there. And it gives me enough time, in the on the off time to like focus on, courses. And I do the UI UX reviews in my mentor program, for people who join that and stuff. And then, it's tough because after 1,100 videos, it's like coming up with new stuff is sometimes very challenging. Most often, like my average process is the day before. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so I'm scurrying about. I have my resources online, my bookmarks and stuff. I go through and I try to find. I have different types of ideas I could do. I could like top X video, which I haven't done enough of those lately. Trying to cover stuff like and to keep it new is very difficult after
For
1,100
sure.
videos,
I,
and
I
so
couldn't
I
imagine.
yeah, and I put all my eggs. Or for a while, I put all my eggs in the YouTube basket, and I'll reveal some numbers here just for the fun of it. Like I said, I was doing pretty solid. I was probably making between, for a couple years there, from 2021 and 2020 to 2019, I was probably making like 180, 190,000, which is nothing to scoff at.
And that's
But I was
everything around YouTube, not just YouTube ads. Is that like sponsorships and affiliates and
Right.
stuff like that? Okay.
That was YouTube ads and sponsorships.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what it was. I had a royalty check from Pluralsight because I have also, because I wasn't always full time YouTube. I started off doing YouTube like seriously at 2014, and I was making money back then by I would produce a video course that is typically like 90 minutes long, uh, once a month. And I did that. I have like 100 courses across
Wow.
Envato Networks, tutsplus.com, which they're the people who own themeforest.net and stuff.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I'm familiar with
I,
them.
I was at them for 2 years. So I did like, 40 something courses for them. And then I switched, and then they got bought. And then I went to digitaltutors.com, and then they got bought out by Pluralsight. And so I was with Pluralsight for 2 years. And so I was making money that way. And they paid me
Okay.
like, $3,500 per course. I wasn't making a ton of money. Pluralsight would give me royalties. And so those royalty
Okay. That's
checks came
nice.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, every 4 months or so. I they were at its height, it was like $9,000 every 4 months. So,
Which
it
is a
was
nice
like,
chunk of
yeah,
change. I mean,
yeah.
that's a
And
good
so I
good amount
was
of money.
yeah, so I was making that, or even right now, it's still like $1,000 and even though I haven't recorded for like 2.5 or 3 years, so it still comes in, something comes in. But
Which
anyhow,
is
like,
always nice to still get a little check there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so anyhow, I went full time probably when I was able to make like a bit over 100,000 per year, and and then at that point, I was still just relying on the YouTube ad revenue and sponsorships. And like I said, it's around 160, 180 or so thousand a year. And then, and I had tried to release my own courses in the past, and they just they flopped because I didn't understand how to release them properly, even though I had a sizable YouTube channel and stuff. I I finally kind of realized how to do it, and then I worked on the course. I for like a year and a half, we built a custom course platform, me and my partner, and I built an email list of like 16,000 people over that year and a half,
Oh wow.
and then we did a pre-launch. I 3 months before it was going to be released, while I was still working on the course,
I
and
remember you doing that. I
yeah,
remember that.
and then the first week it made like $45,000. I was like, "Oh my god, this is crazy! Like, is it going to really be this good? Like once I fully launch, in 3 months?" And so I fully launched, and that first month I made $65,000, and I'm like, talk about a rush! Like it was
Yeah.
2022, at the very beginning because I released on January 4th, and every day, like even into like February, March, April, I was making over $1,000 a day on the course sales.
That's and then while you sleep, right? On
Yeah,
a
it was
Sunday, you'll
I
make
would
you'll
wake
make that.
up
Yeah.
I would wake up and it was like I check my stats and it's like $400 had been made already. It was awesome.
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's
so
got to be crazy to see that. Yeah.
yeah, and so like if I present my screen, can I do that here? I think I can share
Yeah.
screen.
I don't think I have anything locking anything, but if I have to do it on my end, it's been a while since I used Streamyard, and even before that, I wasn't very very good with it. So if
All right, I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see it?
oh, here we go. It says I can add this stream. All right. So there. Yeah. Now we have it on the
Yeah.
stream.
So here's my like my last 30 days, and it's still pretty strong. I'm making like 25,000 here
Wow, for
for the month.
month.
Yeah.
Wow,
And this spike
that's
up here,
impressive.
I had like a little. I released the AI chapter for my UI UX course, and we integrated ChatGPT for the CSS course. But yeah,
Nice, nice.
it's been real steady. I in the first year, I'll switch back here if I can. Here, stop sharing. The first year, I yeah, for 2022, I think it between all my revenue sources, which YouTube ads dwindle, but that's like nothing
Yeah.
compared to the course, which I'm glad I kind of didn't have all my eggs in the YouTube basket still.
No,
It
yeah, for sure,
it
for sure.
grossed like 513,000 for the
Wow.
course sales, and most of that was the course sales, of course. And then I think I netted. I just got my taxes back. I
Nice,
netted
nice.
something like 415,000 or something, and the taxes from
Wow.
that being an S corp, I think was like it came out to like 80,000. So it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be over $100,000 from taxes. So yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely some pretty impressive numbers, dude. Like, I mean, you made half
and
a
it,
million dollars.
right. And
That's
I'm
nice.
still not satisfied with it because I know there's other guys who are making a lot more than that. It's
I've seen people share some of their numbers, and it
yeah,
definitely is impressive. And
right.
and you've been in it for a while. So I know being a YouTuber, like on my end, and it's funny because I even asked Chat GPT or one of the auto GPTs to like make me rich, and it said to like start launching courses because I put in there that I had like a
Eh,
YouTube channel, which is
right.
funny, and a lot of people do that, and I noticed
Yeah.
that something that not many people do, but more people are doing now is kind of what you did was launch a platform instead of just doing a course that you would, host yourself or release on I don't know,
Udemy or
Skillshare
something.
or Udemy.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
do you find that like that's gonna be probably I don't know, maybe like the path that people are more than likely gonna start taking in the course route because the fact that it does feel like everybody's got a course, everybody's got an ebook, everybody's got
Yeah.
that
Right.
now because it's so the thing to do that building your own platform is still kind of like nah, I guess not many people are aware that that's an option, especially if you're
Right.
not in software
Yeah.
and you don't know how to do that stuff yourself and you would have to like
Yeah.
hire that out. Like that can get
Yeah.
really expensive if you're not building it yourself or have a partner who who's a dev that can help you build it. So
Right. Yeah. And so, like, building your own course platform, it took a long time. And, I could have easily used something like, what are the other ones that a lot of the other dudes use?
like Teachable, is that what
Yeah,
is that
Teachable.
yeah.
Yep.
And
There's a Podia.
Gumroad, I think is one
Yeah.
of them, but I think that I am not familiar with them because I've never done
Okay.
a course.
Yeah,
So
the problem with those, like, they were lacking features, and they're not specific to people who create code slash design type courses. So I wanted to have custom module types that where I could teach fundamentals of UI design. So the benefit in being able to create something yourself, obviously, would be tailoring it more specific to the type of content you're creating. Uh,
totally makes sense.
but then it's so much work because you're dealing with everything under the hood. You have invoicing, you have yeah, we created everything from scratch, and so
Yeah.
and it's not even perfect. So I would like to get it to a point where I can kind of like maybe use it as a service or allow people, just other people or the creators, to be able to use the platform, because especially
That's
coders and stuff. Yeah.
what I was gonna say was that eventually, I mean, I don't know if this is an option or even a thought that you've had was that maybe you can even open up like design course to have guest creators host
Mhm.
their courses on there, and if people like sign up for that, or have a bonus that maybe they can take, you know, their percentage for hosting their stuff on your site. So, then it's more
Right.
like, all right, well, if I want to learn UI UX, yeah, I can go on Skillshare or one of these other places, but at least I know design courses like that's what they specialize in.
Right.
Anybody that's there is going to be credible and I know that I'm going to get good content that I expect for that.
Right.
niche
Yeah.
or thing.
I haven't given that idea much thought. Kind of because design courses become synonymous with me,
Gotcha.
like Gary
Gotcha.
Simon. But I have thought about the idea of like opening up the system so that other creators can use it and just host it on their own domain or whatever. Because there's a lot of cool code modules. We have a web-based editor where you can code inside of it with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with a little preview, kind of
That's
like a
cool. That's cool.
Code Academy. I think
Okay.
they set
Yeah.
something like that. So we have a bunch of different types of modules, not just video. But yeah, it's stuff like that. But that'll be in the future. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. No, I
Just
bet.
because
I
ours is
bet.
just kind of stitched together, and we're working on like revamping the back end and all that stuff. But yeah, and who knows? Like right now, it's a really uncertain time with the AI stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
we Everything's being rethought,
uh,
and it's everything's like changing, and we're in like this weird period where it's in this area, this time where all this amazing stuff is happening, but it's not fleshed out yet. Like I tried Auto GPT and like it
yeah.
just didn't work right, and like it got stuck in a loop and stuff, and like, but we could see easily this is going to get fixed, and so
Yeah.
the whole everything's going to be changed. Every industry, including like people for course creators, like it's. I mean, there's a service, it's an AI service that will just generate you a course, like a written course or something.
It's a trip.
I think
The change that's
people will
coming is going to
see
be
we're gonna have a
crazy.
lot of noise, a lot of low quality crap because of that.
Yes.
But the benefit though for people like you and I is that we have an actual following. We have a brand. And so that's going to be the big differentiator. Right? Anybody can create a course now with a click of a button, but are they going to sell it effectively? They still have to do the legwork in building a brand. Although they could have an auto GPT with all its agents start building your brand for you.
I know. I just was messing with that the other day, and I ran like a couple, or I started running my first prompt, and it was like, all right, this list is going to be too big. You need to enter an API key, which I was like, oh,
Right.
but it shows you
Yeah.
where we're at with that AI stuff and Chat GPT is that we hear a lot about it because of what we're involved in, right? Like
Right.
design, software development, we're like the first to get hip to a lot of this stuff when it comes out, and then the buzz that spreads around from what a lot of influencers start doing is when it spreads. But when you're using a service and it says, oh, it's time for you to enter an API key, like the layman's people who don't program, it's like, what the
Right.
hell is an API key? It
Yeah.
scares them. So I think that right now is definitely like the wild west for sure.
Right.
And to see like the stuff that's coming out, I just started finally deciding to mess with Chat GPT API, and I'm looking at Stable Diffusion now, and
Yep.
I've got something patchwork together that's actually doing what I wanted to do right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it is just one of those things like, whoa, where is this gonna go in like the next couple years? Not even like
Yeah.
the next 10 years, like just the next couple years. And
Yeah.
everybody's worried about their jobs, everybody's
Mhm.
worried about what's going to happen. It's like
Yeah.
it went from learn to code to learn to plumb or learn
Right.
learn carpentry
Yep.
because the AI can't take those jobs that quickly.
Yeah.
But how do you feel for designers and people who are like getting into it, and like are you, if you were a designer full time right now, would you be more worried about it, or would you be more excited that it's like, hey, this is a cool new tool that's just going to make my life easier,
Right.
or it's going to be like, hey, this thing's going to take my job, and I need to start doing something else?
Right. So, like at this point in time, based on where things currently sit, and there's a big if because, or like, there's a big question mark in the air because of that. OpenAI's GPT-4's multimodal functionality and capability that's not released really, and there's only maybe I don't know who has access to it. They haven't really revealed it. They just state that they have access. I mean, they have it, but they haven't really like allowed any companies, maybe one company to use it, I think. And so the big question I have is, can you feed this thing like a UI design from Figma, and will it accurately translate it and be smart enough to make it responsive and produce clean code? I'm going to make the assumption that when they reveal it, not reveal it, so to speak, but they open it up for public use. We start experimenting with it. It's not going to be perfect. But having said that, I do follow a lot of AI stuff, and it's exponentially like getting smarter, especially if you allow it to kind of update itself, so to speak. If that happens, then in the future, and this could be as soon as a year or two, yeah, your job might be really, at risk, but that would be the kind of like the same thing for almost everybody in any industry for the most part.
Yes.
I mean, you have those robots too that have fingers, and like I've seen those. They're going to put AI in that, so the
Oh
plumbers
yeah,
won't be safe
definitely.
either.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
no
like,
one's safe. No one's
yeah,
safe.
yeah. So here's the silver lining. We're not there yet. Yes, you should still keep learning how to design, learning how to code, because this is all just conjecture at this point. Because right now, yeah, everybody saw that video where the guy has like this chicken scratch writing of a website, on a piece of paper, and then they use their multimodal image recognition to print out the code. Well, that right there, that doesn't really prove anything. I mean, it's not like it was just very simple. It was like a stacked. There was no columns. There was no like
Mhm.
awesome design or anything.
Yeah, when you
I
get really into the details, it's
Yeah.
not going
And
to be
so,
that
like,
good.
how
Yeah.
smart is it going to actually be to take a real polished layout, high fidelity, and know exactly how to cut it up and make it look good?
Yeah.
And then in the inverse, like if you're a UI designer, and you enter a prompt to tell you to make a website, like how close is that going to, is it going to adhere to fundamentals and all this stuff? Like it's a big what if. And like I said, though, in a couple of years, when it's exponentially smarter, if they, I can't say that they allow to, because the cat's out of the bag.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
I don't care about what laws you make. People are going to use it. It's the same thing
for
with
sure.
drugs. You make them
Yep.
illegal, people are still going to find a way to use it, the black market. So, yeah, who knows? But we shouldn't operate in that mentality like, oh, I'm not going to learn this because this is going to be worthless in a couple of years. I mean, it very well may not be. I think there's still going to be a need for people to understand what solid UI, UX design is, just like
For
there's
sure.
people who understand what good code is. But you don't know. I mean, we're talking about exponential. We can't wrap our minds around how
Yeah.
smart this thing could be. It could really, yeah, it could wipe everything out. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then everybody's screwed, like you said.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no one is
Exactly.
safe. I saw
Right.
something. I think it was on Reddit, but it might have been on Twitter. But it was like this robot that they made it do manual labor all day, and it like collapsed from
Right.
exhaustion or broke or
Yeah.
whatever. I was just like, that is like, oh,
Right.
see, robots can't even do
Yeah.
the manual labor jobs yet. So I
You're
think we're
right.
still okay. I I don't know. I right when it came out, like Chat GPT released and was like public or whatnot, everybody jumped on the bandwagon of making a video, and I did too. And it was just, I knew it was a trendy topic. I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I'll get a quick video out, and I didn't know too much about it. And I was pretty much saying like, don't believe the hype. This isn't going to come for your jobs right away. And I still kind of stand by that. I still think
Yeah.
that there's going to be a lot of jobs that are still going to need devs and designers and people who
Right.
could be replaced technically by Chat GPT. But then who's going to review the code? Who's going to actually set up
Right.
these systems? And yes, you could have a lower paid individual do it, but do you really want some junior level developer that you paid 40 grand a year to just take code from ChatGPT and create your stuff for you? Eventually, it's not the right thing to do, and I think companies will know that. Now, companies that have big budgets and they're cutting edge and they're getting into this now, like they're going to figure out ways that they can make more money from the product itself rather than how they can start replacing employees, because that creative process of building these products, AI can't, or is not at the point where it can replace human
Right.
creativity, and to figure out how they can capitalize the most on it. And yeah, employees are your most expensive resource as a company, but I see it being a long road before it's just like, oh, we don't need developers anymore.
Right.
This is what we
Yeah.
want. The computer's making it
Right.
for us. I've been hearing that when I learned how to code 6.5 years ago, it was, don't learn how to code. It's oversaturated. There's too many developers. There's not enough
Right.
jobs. It's hard to get a job as a junior. You need a college degree, all that stuff. And I was still able to do it. And yeah, times are changing, but like I made a tweet. I was like, I wish I had Chat GPT when I was learning how to code,
Yeah.
because it's your own personal mentor. It
Right.
can help you with so much stuff. It can fill that void of not having a developer that you can
Yep.
talk to. You literally can do that with ChatGPT, and it's pretty good with the code stuff right now. So
Mm.
yeah, I wish I had it when I was learning how to code, and I think people should be taking advantage of it and
Right.
not being scared of it, but rather adopt it and see how it can help them in their
Yeah.
career or learning process.
Yeah. Like another thing that when it first came out, somebody first like read the term prompt engineering. I'm like, what is this crap? Are you serious? Like, you can't be serious. And then like I'm starting to realize like, especially when you're working with something like Midjourney, like trying to get the resulting image to be what you want it to be actually takes some skill. They're becoming more complex in terms of the input that you can enter. So like a mid journey, like understanding how to prompt engineer, so to speak, like that's going to be something that's going to grow, and it's going to take some skill. Although at the same time, as the AI is improving, like it's going to get better at kind of understanding what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have interesting times ahead. I mean, prompt engineering jobs for $330,000. I'm going to imagine that's probably on the development side. They're not just probably typing in prompts and making 300 something
Yeah,
thousand
you better at least know how to maybe they want the prompts from an API, right? Like
dollars.
that's a prompt engineer. I would hope,
Yeah,
not someone who
yeah,
just puts
right.
it together. But funny that you say that. I'm sure you follow him too, Jack Forge. Shout out to him on Twitter. He's been posting a lot, like, oh, I'm gonna become like a mid journey
Right.
expert. And I see some of the stuff that he does, and he made a short little video on how he prompted like a cartoon or something, and
Mhm.
saw that process, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally using this stuff wrong. Like
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what I'm doing with it yet, and I
yeah,
struggle to get the quality images that I see a lot of people sharing. And that in itself is a skill that honestly people who are hungry right now and trying to make a little bit of money, like I'm sure there's some companies right now that are struggling to find people to figure out chat gpt, and they hear the buzzword and they need people to do it. And it, like I'm surprised at the hustle that I see out there with a lot of like, I get the emails all the time of people like, hey, let me chop up your videos for you, or like people trying to find different little weird ways to make money. And there
right.
is definitely an AI boom right now. And
Oh,
like
yeah,
you said, if there's job postings for people to just write prompts, like just
yeah,
learn the API. It's so crazy how simple, like I'm hitting two APIs,
mhm,
like that's it, and I can do so much with just passing in a custom prompt, or
right,
have a couple input fields that drop downs or whatever that
mhm,
people select different
right,
options from whatever you're trying to create, then pass those into your prompt dynamically, and then have it feed you back that. And it's like, I almost think it's right now it's like prompt as a service, right? Like that's
yeah,
pretty much what a lot of these AI apps
yeah,
that are popping up, that's all they are. And
right,
once that clicked, I was like, "Oh, why have I
yeah,
not looked into this? It's
I
really really
know,
easy to play with and
yeah,
make something, and
yeah.
it's fun. It's
It's
cool."
like one of those things. It's like if you're one of those initial, like there's a guy Levels IO, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That
he
dude
has a
killed it.
couple. Yeah, he has a couple these niche services. I think one is like a interior decorating one, and one is like an avatar one. And like
Yep, yep.
he was there really early, making
Super early.
several $100,000s, and a lot of people are like, "What's your moat? Your MOAT?" And it's like, well, yeah, with ChatGPT having plugins, which I don't think is completely open or open yet, I think they're inviting people, developers, to create
Yeah.
these plugins, but they're not like accessible yet to like end users. That may very well just render his business completely worthless. And a lot of people are like, well, why even bother? Well, he made a ton of money. You can make a
Yeah,
ton of money just doing these simple API calls right now. I
crazy.
actually
And
have
with
I have,
jQuery and
yeah,
PHP at that. Like
right.
it's not,
Yeah. I mean,
like
I actually have an idea for like UX service, and I think it would be great. And so I have to team up with a developer to get that started.
that
Just
dude,
because I'm a little bit rusty in the dev section.
it's prime time right now. I would say
Right.
that this is like, we're still groundbreaking now. Yes, if you were like Levels who jumped on it immediately, who I got to give a shout out to, and I hate that I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but you know who he is. His name's Adrian. He's the Australian guy, does coding content. He's in the Discord server. His last name starts with a T. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Twarog or something.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would
know how
butcher it,
either.
so I
Yeah.
feel bad
Right. Yeah.
mispronouncing his name. But the
Codex.
way that
Yeah.
he timed it, like it is honestly like a thing of beauty what he did. He was early, right? 6 months ago when this stuff was in beta, he was playing around with the API. He was ahead of the curve before a lot of people were hip to it.
Mhm.
And then he had his stuff so perfectly lined up where, like, when it went public and everybody was hyped up. He released a course or I'm sorry, an hour-long video tutorial and then multiple tutorials after that, and then started
Yeah.
a second channel, a no code AI stuff. And I like I obsess over YouTube. Like I watch
Mhm.
people, and when I saw his video, I saw it early, and I was like, dude, this he's gonna crush it. And then like a month and a half later, I look and it's like that video's at like 4 million views. He was talking
Right.
about it in Discord, and I was just
Yeah.
like,
Wow.
hats off to him, because he
Yeah.
like that is the dream scenario if you're a YouTuber, and especially you make learning
Yeah.
content and stuff like that, where he just absolutely nailed it. He made a template for the API consumption of I think OpenAI Chat GPT stuff, and it was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
perfect. A thing of beauty, like
Yep.
chef's kiss to that. Like
Yeah, I know.
really.
Yeah, he was selling it for like 99 bucks or something and made a ton of money with that. Which was very smart because it wasn't a course, it
Yeah.
was a script, and
Yeah.
people wanted to set up. Yeah, that's awesome way, like just thinking of different ways to monetize a channel and such. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have exciting times ahead with AI. Potentially scary, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Uh, so yeah, yeah. Uh,
So
Go ahead.
with some of that said, and like right now, so I'm in a unique position. I just took a new job as a like my title is UI UX designer.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting because I've mostly done front end, primarily UI development, but I've done a lot of the middle end stuff in Angular and like RxJS, and I understand a lot of that. But I would say that like my specialty has always been more in the UI side of things in my 5.5 years of being a developer.
You're right.
And I'm actually back in the public sector, and it's a pretty cool thing because I know I've seen you mention it before, and it's 100% true. Like government websites are the absolute worst, and
That's funny.
I am part of a new project that's like a big modernization project where people are going to go to like sign up for their benefits for food stamps and different benefits
Mhm.
that they can get. And it's a big project that's going to be 5 years in the works, but we're
Okay.
in like the early groundbreaking first phases of this project. And I had previously worked with the state of Washington before, and
Okay.
I did a very similar role, but my title then was UI UX developer.
Okay.
And but I'll be doing a lot of the same stuff. But coming
Yeah.
in as someone who is more of a developer, who understands UI UX pretty well, like I feel that I have a good understanding, better than most like front end guys, because of the fact that I was always really into the UI and I would communicate with developer designers a lot.
Mhm.
What is some of the stuff that you would probably tell me to make sure that I do that might be some gotchas that I might not realize coming into a brand new project that I'll be one of the main designers, me and another person that's a vendor will be mostly focusing on all the UI UX design for the first year or so. Like what are some of the things that I should make sure that I lay out early on so that it doesn't
So
like hurt me in the long
just to clarify your role, are you actually designing the UIs in like an app like Figma or
run?
Sketch or something?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
why I am a designer now. Yes, there'll
Right.
be some development work. Yes, I'm already doing a little bit of like, all right, what UI framework might we use? I'm setting up like Angular on my front end. I'll prototype a little bit in code, but I'm still like I'm designing in Figma. I'm working in
Okay.
Figma.
Yep.
Like that's gonna be the primary
Right.
area of my work.
Right. Yeah. So, it's one of those things. I've never worked in the government, the public sector ever. And so I can only imagine like bureaucracy might get in the way big time. And that might be why so many government websites are like stagnant. They look like they haven't been updated in like 2,000 years.
Yeah.
It's just because for whatever reason, things aren't. I'm making assumptions because I haven't worked with the public sector as a designer, but it's just like if you can try to streamline the process and make it as efficient as possible. And again, that's difficult working in a government organization. I
It
would
can be.
say that would be most ideal, but like I don't know what your structure looks like and how many team members that you have to deal with and go back and forth with and all that stuff. So I would say the number one thing, like just thinking off the top of my head, like would be, I yeah, obviously you want to put in the good work. You want the work that you do. Having a solid understanding of design principles and fundamentals. And that's something I teach a lot as part of my course and stuff. Things like visual hierarchy and understanding, getting contrast correct and all that stuff, and just obviously modernizing it, which it sounds like that's what the project entails.
Yeah.
I would say, and the other thing that is outside of your control, like I said, is the bureaucracy. It's like, how long is it? Like you said, 5 years. Like,
Total for there's
okay,
multiple products under the
okay,
basically there's going to be like we're starting with the first product of multiple products, and the back end is also like a separate team. It's honestly like, if just from my short time being there, I will say that it does feel like it's a bit overstaffed at first, but I think they're
mm,
staffing for the long term, especially with like the state, and like
right,
people are here for a while. Our
uh-huh,
turnover rate's not as much because of the fact that it's like union and everybody
okay,
retires at the state,
right,
right? Like they get this job, and people just move within. And there
right,
does seem to feel right now, because of the fact that we're still at like the early stages of the project, like we're not even sprint zero yet, and that starts at the beginning of next month. So there is a lot of communicating with the vendors, and then getting
okay,
our side of the teams on the same page, and there has been a lot of bureaucracy. But I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that it's almost necessary at this point. And I think
mm,
a lot of people are just, they don't want to jump the gun too quick, but it's just something that I feel for the time being the process seems okay.
right.
In a few months I might feel different, but I don't know what that is yet,
We'll
because
have a
we
follow-up.
haven't been
Right,
sprinting, we haven't been actually developing yet, and it's just been a lot of those
right,
early meetings that are kind of boring. So it's like from a UI UX standpoint, like I'm trying to figure out, are we using a front end like UI framework? Because that
okay,
will dictate a little bit of like how
yep,
the styles might go. And then that
right,
determines like, well, then if we are doing that, then that might also help in the sense, well, I don't need to create a style guide because a lot of these frameworks already have their own Figma style guides. And then I can just make the
right,
changes that I need to based off of our branding and our styling and stuff like that. And I'm
right,
kind of doing some rough wireframes of some of the early like top priority tasks that we
yep,
have, just like low fidelity stuff. And I'm trying to prepare myself in the sense of like I'm learning a little bit more about color theory. I'm
mhm,
looking up at like accessibility stuff, which I already kind
yep,
of was familiar with accessibility stuff, but I was more on the developer side of like making sure that you have the right tags and screen readers can read your
yeah,
stuff.
yep,
But on a design side, it's more like, are you using iconology? Are your colors good for contrast? Or your,
right,
just different things like that developers miss sometimes and designers pick up on, because it's more of a design
right,
aspect of the development process and the design process. So I'm
right,
just trying to make sure that, because of the fact that I'm not technically a UI UX designer, although at my previous role, when I did like UI UX development with the state, I was doing a lot of wireframing and stuff like that. But we were already at that point in like, we had our framework, we had like we had everything that we did was already kind of set, and a lot of the stuff we did was forms, and there wasn't much razzle dazzle, and it was an internal application for like the team, and we were modernizing that into a progressive web app, and that was
mm,
we just wanted to make sure that it worked well, and we constantly met with business to make sure that the people that were using it were showing us like what they didn't like about the old one, and making that process easier, which was a little different because this project doesn't have an old application. It's actually
okay,
a new project that's to replace this old mainframe 30-year-old system that's like running on paper still.
right,
And their heart's in the right place, which and that's why I mentioned, like, I know that you've brought up government websites, because they are
yeah,
from what I've seen so far, they are genuinely trying to take the right like approach when it comes to UI
right,
UX. They actually
yeah,
have a dedicated designer. They are like having they're spending money on grants for different companies that are going to come in and help them with that whole process of UI UX research, and they're taking all the appropriate steps. So I have really high hopes for this to be successful, and
right,
hopefully pave the way for future projects to actually really care about user experience, because
right,
the public sector is one of those areas where it's like, well, screw you, where are you going to go? You can't go to the competition. There is no competition,
mhm,
but
mhm,
it really hurts the people that use those services, because they have nowhere
Yeah,
else they can go.
right,
Like they're
exactly,
stuck doing it with you.
right,
And if you make that painful for them, like they're real people on the other end
right,
of it that have to,
yeah,
suffer through your terrible design and
yeah,
user
yeah.
experience. So
It's like I'm not going to get off. I'm not going to talk too much about my political philosophies, but anything the state does, the state or i.e. government
yeah,
does, I mean, they monopolize it in these regards, like in government websites, .gov or whatever, and everybody recognizes that monopolies in a private market are a bad thing. Sometimes they can arise naturally. I mean, look at OpenAI rather. I mean, they're not
yeah.
necessarily a monopoly, but like they're kind of a monopoly right
Well,
now
they
at this
just
point
they're
in time.
the one, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and it's like one of the reasons that it could be a bad thing is because there's no other competition. Then they can drive up prices. They can be lazy. They can have poor customer service
yeah,
because guess what? You have no other recourse. You don't have competition. So it's good though that you recognize it looks like they're trying to do the right thing.
yeah,
It's one of those things too. It's like a brand new project that's a part of a government organization, which it sounds like you're a part of, is a good thing because you have people who are eager to really create a great product. It's the same thing with like NASA and stuff. Like
yeah,
back in the 50s and 60s, they brought in all this great talent and stuff, and they did amazing things. But
yeah.
then it became stagnant over multi generational, situations. So I hope it. Yeah, I definitely hope it goes well. For your sake, obviously.
Oh, for sure. And so far, I like I said, I have high hopes, and it looks good
Yeah.
as much as I can see of it right now. I think if we do follow these processes of taking the right approach to the design, and I know the way that, at least from the development side, like our architect or our senior dev that's running it on our side, not the vendor side, is very
Mhm.
knowledgeable, and I know he's going to do well with the development
Right.
side of things. And I know that once the ball's rolling, and if I got to get in there and do some front end stuff, I can. And I know that I'm one of those people that, like, I like to do things well because I like to make sure, because it's going to reflect on me. And if I do a poor job, I'm not going to go in there and be like, oh, I know enough about design. I'm a developer. And that's the wrong approach. And I want to make sure that I approach it as a designer, and
Right.
not overlook or be too cocky and think that, oh, design's easy, yeah, whatever, you just move some stuff around on Figma, and that's that. But there's way more to it, and that's the stuff that I'm looking into, which is interesting and new to me, is like the research side of things, like
Right.
putting those groups together, and seeing how people use the app, and
Right.
talking with people, and communicating what their struggles are when they use something, or what their expectations are. And like that whole side is something that's completely new to me, that I'm really excited
Right.
about doing, to actually
Yeah.
like get in there with the user.
Yeah, it's cool to see how people use your product actually once you have it. We created this app called frettastic.com for guitar players and stuff, and it's a really unconventional UI, and because it's like a big guitar fretboard, and it has all these options and stuff. And then we get users and stuff, and like sure as enough, I was like, I thought of everything. No, I mean, people start submitting. That's why you absolutely have to have feedback
Feedback, yeah.
early on, and yeah, so yeah, that stuff's fun because then you get to really start thinking about things conceptually rather, and you get to step outside of the the visceral elements of like colors and topography and all that stuff. So yeah, that's definitely cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's exciting stuff. It's yeah, because I think one of the biggest problems seen being internal when it comes to like government websites, I think there's a couple things. One of the things is that it seems like it's hard for government to staff. Many times they don't pay as well, and it's all like, oh, you'll get it in a pension, or you'll get it some other way. So you got to like look at total comp. So it's harder for them to find people that are going to jump on projects. And I've experienced it where we have positions open for a very long time, because especially we're in Washington, dude. Like we're
yeah,
competing with Seattle
right.
pay rates, and it's where the state will never pay as much. So what they
Okay,
end up doing, it honestly, it's kind of, for lack of better words, is stupid because they end up paying for it in vendors, and they end up paying for it in contracts and with vendors and agencies that come and help them augment teams or build out products for them. But then what happens is that many of the times they're left with a product that they didn't build internally, and they're either so dependent on a vendor that they have to
Right.
continually pay them to come and make updates, that then it's like, well, unless it is a breaking change that our one developer cannot fix, we're not going to pay for it. So then things just look the same for 10
Yeah.
years and there's no updates and things stay broken because it's not and this is a general, I'm not talking about any specific things I've seen, but just as a general, this is kind of what I see happen. And then the fact that it's hard to obtain talent that would rather work in
Yeah.
somewhere in Seattle, that
Right.
will be more inclined to like going the extra mile and actually be the type of people that you want developing newer modern applications. So then
Right.
yeah, you're right, they kind of, these apps just they get developed once and they kind of just sit there
Yeah.
forever. And I think that now they're taking more of a like, continual development integration thing. Like they're it's very modern, this stack, and the way
Okay.
that our process is going to be is also very modern. And as long as that this way of doing things doesn't change in the next 5 years and becomes the old way of doing things, because that could happen too. And
Mhm.
if it does, at that point, then we try to adopt newer things, newer, you know, tr- uh, trends in UI UX, or things that are better, or even technologies on the development side of things. As long as they continue to make these apps better, that's great. But at some point it does seem like they just run out of the resources to do it, or don't have the money to pay the
Mhm.
vendors that built it to maintain it.
Which
And
is
then
crazy
yeah,
if you consider like all the wasteful spending that tax money goes on.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, come on. But yeah, that's a different topic. But
for
no,
sure.
I 100%, yeah, get it. Yeah, that sucks because in some like there was a Pentagon report where they paid so many thousands, like $50,000 for like plumbing or like a hammer or something like that. And it's just like, it's crazy, they're all over the place. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Oh,
So it's very like,
that's nuts. That's nuts.
right.
Oh man, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be, and yeah, and that doesn't happen in private sector, because there's like, if
Yeah,
you're losing money or you're not making money, then they're gonna
exactly.
start seeing why, and then
Right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
if you don't keep the ball rolling when you're in the private sector, then you fall behind and the
Right.
company doesn't make money, and then yeah, that's why people
Yeah.
don't, they get fired a lot
Yeah.
easier from
Yeah.
from
That's why
from
competition.
jobs like
Yeah.
that.
Competition just that's the great equalizer. Like people who yeah, it'd be great if I had a monopoly on UI UX design courses, right? Because I could charge whatever I wanted to. But but there's other people like Michael Melwich, he's my good friend. He's a YouTuber, does UI UX, same exact stuff that I do. And we push each other, and I'm looking at what he's doing. He's probably looking at what I'm doing and stuff. And like, if I start treating or not treating users bad, or I mean, if I did, but if I'm start putting out like quality content that's like really suffering in quality, they'll just go to him instead. And so
For sure.
it's like it's kind of like its own ecosystem, really, when you have a nice big open free market. And so that's
Yeah.
where, yeah, government, they have just inherently like a bad position in that regard, because they don't have competition, because money's expropriated from taxation. That's where they get
Yeah.
their funding from. It's a never ending funding source.
Exactly.
So that they get to remain in business, but then they're like, they don't have those incentives, those natural market incentives, such as
Yeah.
competition that might take them over. And it's crazy too, because a lot of people think big corporations hate regulation. Not true at all. They're the ones who lobby for the regulation. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's a way for them to. They're big, and they're big enough. They have enough money and resources to abide by these new regulations that they want the politicians that they buy off to who do the legislation. But their would-be competitors can't compete
Yeah,
because of the
they strangle
regulation.
out the
Yeah,
competition by
yeah,
having that regulation that only they can afford to pay. Yeah,
right.
it's a
Yeah,
tricky tricky little
Yeah.
thing that happens in capitalism. But I then we get, like you said, too deep into, well, lobbyists shouldn't be allowed, and a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff is pretty shady. And the problem with the government stuff that I've seen is that there's too much there's just too much involved when where money comes from. So if they do approve raises, it's not like my boss comes to me and say, "All right, the higher up approved the raise. Here's your raise." It's like, no, it goes through all kinds of legislature and process, and the union fighting for more money, and
Right.
then it's a thing that happens that gets signed into the budget, and then it by the
Mhm.
time you get your raise, it's a year down the road. Where if it was
Right.
private sector, because I've been on a team for a corporation when we were all pissed off and unhappy that we weren't making money, and it was just in a week of
Right.
threatening to quit, that human resources gave all of us a raise, and
Right.
that would never happen in local
Right.
government or even federal government, because it's just there's too much
Yeah.
stuff involved when it comes
Yeah.
to doing that. And the private sector and big corporations have the luxury of being able to throw money around, and if you've got money, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Like, with
Right.
enough money.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
um, I have no intention of speeding through these, and we can keep them going. But like, if you have other engagements, or if you want to like cut it now, we totally can. I think I had like a couple questions jotted down for you. I don't know if you want to maybe like, it was more like UI UX stuff, and I think we talked about AI, I just had a few more things. It's totally up to
Yeah.
you.
No, that's fine. No, I'm cool. Yeah.
Cool.
What were the other questions?
So I had just a couple things, and just stuff that I was trying to jot down. Like, just you know, for people who are trying to get into like UI UX, right? Because I get the
Mhm.
the comments a bit on my videos sometimes when I mention that stuff, and I mentioned it in a recent video because I said that I had a new job, and they were like, "Oh, we'd like to know more about that stuff." So, like, we know you have designcourse.com. That's the URL, right?
Yep.
Designcourse.com. So they can get started there. But what are some of the things that maybe people get wrong about UI UX design, or may not understand, and like either scare them away from it, or lead them to think like, oh, like my thing was, I wanted to learn development because I felt that designers made less money. And I'll be honest,
Right.
when I was like looking at it, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, the design stuff is cool, but like programmers make more money, so I'm gonna go with the more money thing. And I feel that that's kind of true. But when you get to a certain level, you get a good UI UX designer, they're
Yeah.
making six figures, they're making bank.
Right.
So what are some of the things that people get wrong or may not understand about UI UX when they're trying to get into it?
Right. So you have probably more of like a developer audience. And one of the I get this question very often. I've made videos about it and stuff. And it's like, why is it necessary to step into a design app like Figma or something, or Sketch or Adobe XD, whatever, and just put in all this work just designing stuff, and it doesn't even work. Like, you can't even use it. Like, a lot of developers ask that question. Like, you know what I do? I just stuck in the code, and I just, I write out my HTML, CSS, and there it is. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's pretty much 99% of the times it's not going to be as good as looking. You cannot iterate quickly with code. You might think you may be the fastest coder, but guess what? You take like the average Figma user, or even like a beginner Figma user, you ask them to move this over here, they can just take their mouse, their cursor, and just move it over there. So you can iterate so much faster, and you can develop your ideas way faster in the design process using an app like Figma. So, and there's a reason why we have a separation of roles. There's a reason why there's a UI UX designer, and then there's a reason why there's roles for developers, front end developers. They work with each other, and their specialties, they result in a product that's going to be a lot better. Now, of course, you could be a full stack dev, and you could be a great designer, and you could be a great coder, but that takes a lot more time, obviously, like, to learn all these skills and stuff. So that would be my number one thing I tell people is like, you want to get into, if you want to be able to be like a one-man show and be able to design great looking websites on your own, like, yeah, learning Figma or these other apps is a necessity. You should not just jump in. I wouldn't say necessity. I would say it's very it's very much encouraged. Instead of just going in the code, and just start writing out stuff from scratch. Now, if you're using a framework, of course, that has these components already, I remember Bootstrap was a big thing. I I'm not sure what there is these days. I really haven't followed up.
Tailwind's big, but
Tailwind, yeah.
it's a little I don't know. I've played with it a tiny bit, and it's too much
So I
in
don't
my
know if
HTML.
so I don't know if like Tailwind has actually pre-designed components. Do they have that?
They
Or
do, but I think it's part of
okay,
like their paid, but
okay,
they're not
yeah,
even pre-designed. I would say that they're pre-built, and
okay,
from what I've seen, it seems like they just give you all the CSS classes and structure
right,
it as
right,
it should
right,
be. But it's not like you just
yeah,
drag and drop the component, and
right,
they might. I haven't worked
yeah.
with it enough, but it
And
doesn't
so
seem like they do.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, unless you're working with one of those things, like material design or whatever,
yeah,
it's like you could that kind of will negate having to use it, but it's still going to benefit you if you spend the extra time so that you can understand the flow of how a person gets from point A to point B. Another thing I'll say on this topic is if you're interested in like UI UX design and like you can't design for crap, right? I play guitar, I play drums and stuff, and it's an analogy that I make. It's like I when I wanted to learn how to play really fast shred guitar, I didn't just like start trying to come up with my own solos. I covered other existing solos from like crazy people like Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve Vai and all these crazy guitarists. It's like I learned by copying other people, and that's another thing I say. Like with UI design, like you can go to some great sites like dribble.com, Behance, or whatever. And if there's a design, it's like, wow, I wish I could be able to design that because we are great observers, right? We can see, like, listen to a great guitar solo, and it's like, oh, that's amazing. And then you can tell, we can differentiate between really quality and like really crap as an observer. But when you go to try to like do it yourself, it takes a lot of practice, right? There's people
for
that
sure.
just didn't do that, whatever. So what we learn the way we learn best in my opinion is when you're starting out as just a matter of practice. You don't put this stuff in your portfolio. uh, is to copy other designs like physically. Like you have two monitors, ideally you put one of the design that you're trying to copy, you get Figma on the other monitor, and then you physically just start recreating the design. You can use different content, different photographs and assets and stuff like that. But I really honestly believe the process of doing that as a matter of exercise builds in that muscle memory, so that when you go to create your own unique design, you're going to take influences from these other designs that you've created. And it's not the only way to learn, of course, but it's a great kind of like I guess you could say like a hack, so to speak. So because I've written my own guitar solos, and they're better for it. I'm better for it because I was learning other people's guitar solos, and I kind of figure out how it's done, and I build in that muscle memory in my fingers, literally. In this case, it's
Yeah.
kind of more of like a mind control when you're dealing with design from that aspect.
Totally. It's that whole what is it? A good artist copy, great
Right,
artist
right.
steal, right? And then
Yeah, there you
I've
go.
I've heard of copy work. I think is what it is. I made a video about it where it's the same concept, but I think authors do it where they basically just literally copy the books of their favorite authors and write them so that they
Mm,
kind of develop that muscle memory of like the storytelling or just there's definitely some science and truth behind that, and the whole like of course you're going to have to copy or at least get inspired by other people.
mhm.
Everybody does it, and that's how like new trends come up, and that's how you
Yeah,
also stay on the pulse with a lot of that stuff, because if you're
right,
not constantly at least keeping an eye on things occasionally to make
right.
sure that you don't
Yeah,
just get left behind and there's like a new cool design trend that a lot of people are doing. Because yeah, trends are trends, but the truth is
mm,
that trends end up molding future designs, and if
right,
you're falling behind or not keeping up with a lot of that stuff, I know it sounds daunting, but eventually it's you either evolve or you die. And if you
right,
want to be the designer that's designing websites that look like it's 2011, then
mhm,
you can do that. But I'll tell you
right,
this, you're going to have a hard time like
yeah,
finding gigs. And to like talk about what you were saying with the process of basically like designing first then coding, I'm guilty of what you said myself. Like, yeah, I'm like, no, I'd rather just start coding it. But I've noticed that when I do at least even take like a piece of scratch paper and say like, all right, this is where I want my my sidebar, and
right,
this is what I want over here, and just a rough napkin
right,
and pen wireframe, even that is
Right.
better than just jumping into the code unless you are within a framework. Because yeah,
Right.
frameworks, like I said, my previous job, we still wireframe stuff though, like really low fidelity stuff, even though we were within a framework. And sometimes I would prototype right in the code and show that as a live prototype instead of doing it on a design tool. But that was because of the fact we were in a framework. Well, we still, before we wrote any code, we showed business wireframes because there's a lot of discussion that goes on around that. And like, even if you're a freelance developer, like, could you imagine if you had to show a client what their website might look like, but you had to code it first and you didn't want to
Yeah.
do it in a design
Yeah.
tool?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
That's
you're going to be
crazy. Yeah.
working a
I
lot
forgot to
harder.
mention
Yeah.
that, obviously. Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't worked with clients in a long time myself, but yeah, that's like
Yeah.
one of the biggest factors,
Yeah.
being able being able to iterate quickly because clients, they know best.
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And with a
But
lot of
it's gonna,
people,
yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. And with a lot of people who are, trying to become that one-stop shop, if they are interested in freelancing, like, you got to have some design. Like, it's just
Right.
you can't make good-looking websites unless you're using templates to
Right.
as a freelancer,
Yep.
and expect to do it without even like brushing up or being familiar with like
Right.
modern design
Yeah.
and
Another thing I'll say on just the UI UX topic is like in terms of UI design, it's like you, people have to have an understanding of like what the core fundamentals are, and depending on who you ask, there's like 7 or 8 of them. Like I mentioned before, visual hierarchy. Um, Visual hierarchy, by the way, is just like understanding where to direct the eye first, like based on the priority of the elements. Like what is most important? Usually, it's the headline. So that piece of type is going to be the biggest piece of type on the
yeah,
page. And so that's what visual hierarchy is. It's something that's found in all of art, not just UI UX design, but it's definitely hugely important UI UX design. And imagine if all your type was exactly the same size and same color and same spacing. Is like you wouldn't know where to look, right? So
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
visual hierarchy is. That's real important to understand. Understanding color and contrast, scale, proximity, understanding white space, topography. I mean, those are most of them right there. Just to, my UI UX course, I spend about an hour, like the very beginning, the first hour of all the 18 hours there are. I just spend an hour on that stuff. It's the only conceptual part of my course. Everything else is by example, and you're actually doing stuff. But that's important to have because then it gives you context when you're building out a design. When those things are in the forefront of your mind initially, because then once you get enough experience in your designing, this stuff just becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it. So yeah, understanding the fundamentals, that's real important. But those are probably just a few things I would probably make a note to people who are developers, especially who want to get into UI UX design.
cool, cool, yeah. I you know I like that this conversation just kind of flowed and went natural. I know you got people might not know you got like pet reptiles, and I know you recently got like back into fitness, and it's something that I've been doing as well. I've been trying to wake up early and go to the gym, and you were
Yeah,
posting
we can
some
talk about
some
that.
shirtless
Yeah.
progress pics, which is it's pretty brave, man. I don't think I've ever posted a shirtless pic on purpose on the internet.
Yeah,
So but that's
that's
cool. It's cool
funny.
to see that.
It's crazy. Well, the reason, I mean, I've always been a person who has gone to the gym since I was in 10th grade. And I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months here in July. And I've always gone like every single week, unless there is a vacation. And, throughout that lengthy amount of time, you have your ups and downs and stuff. Like, you're more focused than others. But I've always gone. And especially in the last 10, 15 years, I've always ran too. Like I love running.
I
I,
hate running.
it, I know
It's
a lot of people hate it. My wife hates it.
yeah.
She hated it I've been with my wife for 20 plus years, since high school, and she's always hated it. But then she had insomnia for the last 2 years, and she's
Oh
decided
wow.
to start taking up running, and it's actually helped her. So
Oh,
she
awesome,
she was
awesome.
willing to. So when it comes to running, you have to suffer for the first couple of weeks, then it becomes a lot better. So yeah, for those of you who hate running, like you have to give it a concerted effort for at least 2 weeks running, like 5 days a week to make a good judgment call on it for yourself personally. But what had happened though recently is, and this is where I'm going to get into my little addiction story, is back, I was 22 and I had a friend, and of course, 4 years after college, I never went to college, but my buddies did for computer science and stuff. They came back into town and stuff, and they carried their drinking habits with them, obviously. And I was not a drinker. I was like the type of person up to that point where I would drink maybe once or twice a year, and just get slammed and shit faced and like I just hated life,
And this was at 22?
Yeah,
Like
this is at
around that age?
22,
Oh
like
man,
maybe
at
from like
22 I was a
16 to
lush.
22. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we actually started working on an internet business, selling Ventrilo servers and TeamSpeak servers to
Oh,
gamers.
okay.
Like
Yeah,
that was the
yeah. I'm
old school
familiar with
thing.
those. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
World of Warcraft days.
yeah. And like after working and stuff in his parents' basement at that point in time, we got to eat, and like he would get a beer. I'm like, wait, what? This is weird. Oh, okay, I guess I'll get a beer too, and and that was it, dude. Like after that point, I was drinking like I didn't start drinking a ton, Like I would just do it, a few times a week, whatever, not a big deal. I wouldn't get hammered too bad. And then the my biggest mistake ever was because at that point I was freelancing. That's how I made my money. This is like
Okay.
2005 or something. Actually, it's a little bit later than that, but I was freelancing. I worked at home on a computer, and I decided, I don't know why, but one day I was like, I'm gonna buy a 6-pack and bring it home.
Oh,
And like it was awesome because I could have a buzz and I could work at the same time. Like and I was never a day drinker ever, but around 6:37, that's it. And I'm the type of person, once I start drinking, I don't stop until I go to sleep, like 11 or something. And so that
yeah.
was me, and it progressed all the way up till I was like 30. I'm like drinking, that my business started failing, my freelance business. So mega stress. That means I'm drinking
More
every
drinking.
single night,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single night for like a year and a half, I think. And I was drinking between like anywhere between 6 to 12 at like a night. And like I got heavy, and I didn't really, again, mind you, I was still running at this point in time, but still going to the gym. So I had muscle, but it was like fat was covering it and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I think I was like 215 at one point. And then I had like a health scare because I started getting like seeing stars, even just sitting down. I didn't get up, like,
Oh,
like
weird.
whatever. I was like, oh god. And then I was kind of like, this is a catch 22. It's very weird. I was a hypochondriac at that point. I still am.
So that's
But
not good
like,
if you start.
why am I drinking like every night if I'm a hypochondriac? My wife would tell me, she's a nurse. She was like, "You're the weirdest person. Like anything small happens to your health, like but yet you're drinking every night. Like what are you doing?" So anyhow, I attributed like I had a big panic attack when that happened and stuff, and it's horrible. And so I quit cold turkey for about 45 days, and then I justified, hey, I lost like 20 pounds, in like 45 days just from not drinking so much, because all that calories, especially from beer, and that's what I drank, was
Yeah,
beer.
I'm a beer guy too, and
Yeah,
that
and
stuff
like
will make you fat.
so I was like, oh, I'll start drinking wine, and then that was the reintroduction to alcohol. And
It's
initially it
so
was once a
funny.
week, and then it
It's
was like
so
twice a
funny.
week,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then yeah, and so throughout that, like I'm 39 now, and like that happened when I was like 30, 31. My drinking would just gradually increase back to unacceptable levels. Maybe not every single day, but maybe 5, 6 days a week. I'd be drinking. And
Yeah.
so I realized, and multiple times I would try to stop drinking, and like I would last maybe a few days, but I would always just go back. And so
It's rough, man. Alcohol is rough.
yeah, and so what had happened is like in December 13th, yeah, I woke up and the room was spinning. I'm like, what is going on? This has never happened before. Why is the room spinning? Like, not for like minutes upon minutes, but it was like when I initially woke up, I was like, I must be dehydrated or something. This alcohol, I know that's the culprit, because it's not like I drank a ton at that night, at that point in time, but I was like, so I decided to go to one of those IV clinics where they can put in like these
Yeah.
cocktails. Yeah, I decided to do
Yeah.
that for the first time. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to stop drinking. And so that was December 14th, and I stuck with it all the way, up till now. I have not had a single a sip of alcohol. And
Since
for me,
December.
yeah,
Like, Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so it's
awesome,
been
man.
4
That's
months
really cool.
basically, and I'll be honest with you, like, the first month, month and a half, I didn't do anything, like, I didn't replace it or substitute it with anything,
Yeah.
but then I've never been, like, a big weed smoker or anything like that, but I got a bong. I started I started doing that for a little bit at the end of the night, but you know what? That gave me like a head high. It was not the same as alcohol. The big kicker for me was the edibles. Like the
Oh, yeah.
edibles, I love them now, and like I'll have like half of a cookie at night. I feel bad like because I don't want to like influence people to start doing drugs and stuff. But for me, it's like it's almost the exact same experience as like getting drunk or whatever, but you don't have
For
all the
sure.
calories, and it's a
Yeah,
hell of a
yeah.
lot more healthy for you. I'm not going to
You
sit there and say it's healthy. It's not healthy, but it's like a million times more healthy than alcohol.
I agree.
So
It's
that's
definitely
that's
the
my
lesser of
situation.
two evils for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a
And
lesser of two
in
evils.
that video that I made, I kind of talked about that. And I think it's funny when you were like, and then I started drinking wine, and it's so funny. It's such like I wonder if it's like a guy thing because I know
Yeah,
I've done it too. It's like, you know what? I'm really cutting back on my drinking. I'm just drinking wine now. And it's like if
right.
you've ever gone to like because I was a waiter before, so we had to take like
Okay,
alcohol classes because we serve alcohol and we got to know when to cut people off. And basically
okay.
like a 1.5 ounce of hard liquor is equivalent to 4 ounces of wine, which is the same as a 12-ounce beer. Like as
Yeah,
far as like
yeah,
consumption of alcohol goes, like
yeah,
a glass of wine and a 12-ounce beer is the same. Like it's gonna have the same effect on you.
yeah,
Sure, it might be slightly better calorie wise because beer's
yeah,
like liquid
exactly.
bread, right? Because of all the
Right.
carbs and stuff. But still, it's just so funny how that
Yeah.
psychologically with drinkers, because you mentioned like you were drinking like 12 beers a night, and when I was like 22, 23, I was living in Vegas and my life wasn't cool. Like it wasn't like I was partying every night. I would go
Mhm.
home and drink by myself and play video
Right.
games, which
Same here.
when you
Same here.
say the buying the beer and then going home to
Yeah.
drink and then like if anyone is questioning whether or not they may have a problem with drinking, if you are constantly drinking by yourself at home, and by yourself
Yeah.
also counts like if you're married but your wife's not drinking, it's like not like a special occasion, like it's like Tuesday
Right.
night and you buy
Yep.
a six pack and you're knocking that
Mhm.
whole thing back, and
Right.
you may have a
Yeah.
problem. Like
Yeah.
I mean I know I did, and I've cut back a lot on my drinking, but when I made that video, it was the same thing. Like we were on vacation and it was just like a
I
couple
know.
beers by the beach, a couple beers by the pool, and next thing you know I was
Uh-huh.
drinking every single day. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm 38, I'm not 25 on on a vacation. I'm with my family, and I noticed that I started like those old habits, like you said, it
Right.
comes back really easily. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
would say that right now I feel pretty confident that like I'm at a good spot where like we'll have me and my wife will have a couple drinks like on a Friday night, and like I'm good. But it took me a long time to be able to do that,
Yeah.
and I still am consciously aware that like I can slip up, and I try not to go 2 days in a row of drinking because
Uh-huh.
then it's just so much easier. The
Right.
next then it's
Yeah.
a six pack on Wednesday, and
Yeah.
it's like it happens
Yeah.
that fast.
Quitting's like a process, like, for
Yeah,
me at least. Like, some people can just quit cold turkey. That was their first time trying to quit, and they're done. They exist. But for me, it's like, like each time I would quit, like I would gain something from the experience, even though I failed.
yeah,
And say it builds up momentum. And so I can't sit here and say I'm not never going to drink again. I'm not going to say that. But like for right now, like I'm in a real good spot where plus like once you quit drinking, especially if you're drinking so much that your caloric intake is like just making you fat, like once you stop that, like you're gonna feel better, so you're gonna work out better. So like my running went from like maybe 30 to 40 miles a month to like 100 to 120 a month. Like
wow,
because I had
wow.
to replace that time frame at nighttime with running initially because I had to do something because I would get like just like
Antsy, like
it's a yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
it's
And so,
a
like, I would just run,
yeah.
and that would get me out of that state of mind. And so, yeah, the weight obviously has come off big time. So I think I'm almost about like 20 pounds now. And so I was never really overweight. I had a dad bod for sure, but
Yeah.
20 pounds difference when I'm at this weight, like I can see abs now. It's crazy, which I
Yeah, oh,
never been able
I
to see.
bet.
So it's like,
Yeah, that's nuts.
when
That's
you stick with it long enough, for at least fitness purposes, it pays off because it gives you more inspiration once you see the results and you get through the difficult months, those initial months or whatever. It makes it easier to like kind of stick with it because you're like, I don't want to go back to that level
for
of
sure.
body fat percentage. And obviously, you know that
100%.
it's also toxic for you. So when you're doing it every night, it's like this cannot have good effects, even if you don't feel the effects in the here and now. Like there has to be something down the line where like, damn it, I should not have been drinking like that for 15 years or whatever.
Dude,
But it
it's
is what
so
it is.
funny. I 100% feel you when you're like, I'm a hypochondriac, and I like worry like it's the same thing. For the
Right.
longest time, like I was drinking myself to sleep like on a
Yep.
nightly basis.
Right.
And then it's like I get like the weirdest little like, oh, there's a weird pain in my stomach. And then I'm
Yes,
like
that's scary.
immediately freaking out and at
Yes.
having conversations with the doctor where I'm like, look, doc, you don't understand. I am a huge piece of shit. And I know that there's something wrong with me. And they're like, no, dude, you're fine. Just stop drinking so damn much. And you're like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, my wife, fortunately, she's like an encyclopedia, always has been, like very book smart with like medical stuff. So I've been able to avoid the doctor, and I just annoy the shit out of her. And like, and it's not cool because like she's got to the point after 20 plus years, like she's like mean about it. Like I'll tell her like, is there something
She's like
wrong? I'm like,
house.
I have anxiety about this. Like she's just like, then I get mad at her because she's like Kathy fucking Bates in that one movie where she like smashes this guy's legs or something. But anyhow, that's the
Uh,
situation with her and I. And like, now that I'm like pretty healthy though, it's like it may even be worse. It's like, wait, I'm not drinking anymore. Like, what the hell's going on with me? I have to get over that. I was what we were. We'll conclude here pretty soon, but as a side story, we were watching this video or this show on Netflix about mushrooms and
okay.
how taking one trip of what's it called,
Uh,
psilocybin or psilocybin or whatever.
psilocybin. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. How it can help people, obviously with alcohol, like just one
PTSD and
one
stuff. Yeah.
one session with this stuff. Yeah, PTSD, and I would imagine. Oh yeah, not imagine. I know it can help with anxiety, but fear of death. I think that's where this the hypochondriac kind of comes in. Like you have a fear of death. I wouldn't say it's irrational because we're all going to die and we don't know what the hell's going to happen. But there's a lot of people who aren't hypochondriacs, and perhaps it's because they don't really have this crazy fear of death. I and
Makes
so I'm not
sense.
saying I'm going to start go do a trip or something, start trying to like grow mushrooms or something. But
I've
it's
done a
something I look.
heroic dose before, and
Yeah.
it was intense. Yeah,
Okay, because I've
yeah.
heard that most people have a positive experience, but I guess it probably depends on your state of mind if you're in a controlled environment or if it's like you're just packing on other stuff, like you're probably drunk on top of it or whatever.
Well, so because I talked about a lot of that in the video, and I never like to like
Oh,
glorify any of this stuff, but I
right.
made that video private, and I'm eventually like it is what it is. It's stuff I've done
Like
in the
you
past,
don't
and
have
I'm
to
not.
upload
I'm
forever.
better
Yeah.
for it now, but I don't mind talking about this stuff because I actually like I started doing or trying drugs when I was like really young,
Right.
and younger than you should be, and I technically like did acid at like 10 years old, and it
Oh
was
my
it was
god.
it was
Right.
crazy
Right.
crazy like a half a hit, and I had no idea what was going on. But as I got older, I had continued to try that stuff, and I never actually tried to have a spiritual experience on
Right.
any of that stuff. It
Right.
was always like, oh,
Just
we're
get fucked
going
up.
to a
Yeah.
rave or we're going to a party or something like that. That when I actually decided, and this was, man, I didn't have kids yet, but we were living in Vegas. So this was probably like close to 10 years ago, I would
Okay.
say. I took a very large dose, like almost like close to 5 grams of mushrooms, which is,
Oh, okay.
like
Okay.
3.5 is a lot. And
Right.
I think it was like 4 point something. And it was, I purposely said, like, my buddy at the time, I think, it was big, like early Joe Rogan years. And
Okay.
he was big into it. And he was like, here,
Right.
man, this is what you have to do. You have to just take it and
Okay.
sit in
That's
a dark
hilarious.
room in the silence. And I was like,
Okay.
man, that sounds pretty heavy. And I
Yeah.
did. And yeah, it was very, I'm not a religious person, but I would say it was the closest to a spiritual experience that I've ever had. And I had
Right.
a lot of self reflection that I did then.
Right.
And I could definitely see that from a I wouldn't say a medical standpoint, but I will say that I felt better with my mental health, and just like I felt more clear on like what my purpose was in a strange way. Like it sounds very hippie dippy like
Oh, no,
bullshit,
I
but
understand.
I did, and I've never done DMT, and it's one of the ones on my list that I was like, I really want to, because I know a lot of people say they have a very spiritual experience, but it when I was done, it gave me a like I felt like I had a different outlook on life. And I
Mhm.
remember to end the my wife at the time used to work graveyard, and I had a graveyard shift as well. And this was on one of those days where I was off, but she wasn't, and I took the mushrooms like close to the later in the evening, and
Right.
she got home like at 2 in the morning because she got off early, and she found me sitting up on the bed, like cross-legged in a dark room with like the hugest shit-eating grin on my face from ear to ear. And she's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait till I tell you
Oh
what
my
I've
god,
just gone through."
funny.
So yeah, it
Yeah,
was
it's one of those things,
intense.
like, I don't think I would do it until, like, unless if I hit, like, a midlife crisis, or something like, because right now because there is a chance, like, you can have a bad trip, and, I'm not sure if
If
I
you've
wanna
never
mess
done
with
it
that.
before too, yeah,
Yeah,
you might
right.
wanna from my professional experience, I would say start with like a lighter dose, and
Right, right,
maybe, make sure your environment's good, and
right.
don't
Exactly.
set yourself up for failure.
Yeah,
But it's just
right,
one of those things where the heavier the dose, the more intense it will be.
right,
And if you have never done it before, like I wouldn't recommend taking like an eighth, like right off
right,
the bat, because that
right,
might just be a little too much for a
right,
first time experience. But
right.
yeah, I
Um,
think it's good. I think it's awesome that a lot of that research is starting to be done. I listen
yeah.
to a lot of like a Huberman podcasts, and he talks
Oh,
a
yeah.
little bit about a lot of that research that they're
Yeah,
going on behind psilocybin and MDMA and like a lot of that stuff. It's good to finally
right.
see that I feel that it's headed in the right direction when it comes
Yeah,
to
for
that stuff.
sure.
But
Yep.
that's the
Yeah, because
whole
it was
war on
suppressed.
drugs and all that stuff.
It was suppressed, like, unnecessarily so, and yeah,
yeah,
and you think about all the people who had PTSD and coming home from, like, wars and stuff, and, like, they weren't able to get access to it
yeah.
legally, and, like, all these people could have been helped,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And it goes back to the lobbyists, right? All the pharmaceutical
Yeah, there
lobbyists
you
lobbied
go.
to make sure that that stuff stays
Yep,
illegal so that they can't have that competition. And then the first
yep,
thing that they do when when they realize that they can't fight it anymore, the first thing that they do is try to extract the experience, or try to extract like what causes that, right? Like they try to make fake weed, so they try to pull out the THC, but then they lose all the other beneficial
yeah,
cannabinoids, and they see psilocybin is it has all these great benefits, but instead of like just using the plant, they want to put a patent on whatever chemical they can extract that gives you the closest experience to it that they can put under their name. And yeah, it's
yeah,
just it sucks.
yeah.
But
And that's why, like, marijuana became illegal in the first place, is because hemp was a
yep,
competitor in the textile
yep,
industry in the 30s,
yep,
so they
yep.
made up all the fake stuff, and we're still dealing with
Yeah,
it almost
yeah.
100 years
Reefer Madness was just a huge
later. Yeah,
propaganda film based off
right,
of all these things that they were saying that it did that never
right,
did. And
yeah,
yeah, it's a whole rabbit hole that I've taken the time to go down, and it just it
right.
makes you feel a certain way and realize that I don't know, maybe everything that we were told isn't true, and some of the things that they think they kept
I
from us
just
for our own good
I
wasn't
just
in
yeah,
fact
I just
that.
posted on Twitter this interesting, tweet a person made, this, Twitter thread, about how the US government basically, in order to hide the effects of inflation, when inflation started to occur, like, in the 70s, what they did is the head of, like, whatever the food department was at that time basically said, "Listen, inflation is making eggs and, like, stuff like that, like that type of produce go up, and there's nothing we can do about it, the price." So, well, what they did to hide the effects of inflation was to purposely demonize cholesterol in eggs. And people still believe, like eggs are bad for you because of the cholesterol. It's not true at all. So
Wow.
what they would do, the idea is that if they demonize the eggs, then less people would be eating the eggs, and they'll be going to processed stuff, which is cheaper. They wouldn't notice the effects of inflation as much because they weren't purchasing the egg,
The more
like they were.
expensive food.
And so they've done this continually through different, I guess, food items, and like the food pyramid's a joke.
Yeah,
And
yeah, don't get me started on
and
that
now
front.
they're trying to come down on meat because
Yeah,
meat.
yeah, I saw that, which
Well,
carbon emissions and all that
yes,
stuff, yeah.
exactly, and it's all just because, especially inflation's really going crazy now because of all the printing they did during COVID.
Mm,
And so everybody knows that everything's going up right now. So now
yeah.
you seem subtly like pushing us towards like eating sludge of some sort, like insects and stuff. And like you
So
see these like celebrities, like these actresses, like I forget who it was. Some evil MF, everybody knows. But she was like talking about eating bugs and stuff. And like, dude, I'm not eating bugs. I'm not eating insects. I want my meat, and that's that. But
and
it's more expensive though because of these idiots in the government and the printing presses, and the U.S. dollar is just getting weaker and weaker. It's a form of theft. When
yeah.
they print more and it introduces it into the money supply, but they have to do it. It's not backed by anything. Now we're losing
Yeah.
our reserve currency status. All these countries are dropping the U.S. dollar. I could go on and on.
I know, I know.
Things
This
aren't
could
looking
turn into
good.
like a whole different topic, but no,
Yeah,
I agree. I also saw that was it Iran or one of those
yeah.
countries is like getting off of American
US
oil
dollar,
and all
yeah.
that stuff.
There's a
And
bunch of them. Yeah. Kim.com, like he talks about this a lot on Twitter. Uh, but so I mean, I'm not going to move out of the US anytime soon, but
yeah.
it's not looking good. But I do have Bitcoin, so that's a saving grace.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I
I mean, they
I
could
wish
trend
I
me
would
for
have
me.
been smarter with my crypto investments because I got into
Oh,
it
me
in
too.
2017, but I went broke buying on the way down, and then when it bottomed out, I was like, I'm just gonna let it sit. And then when it started picking back up, I saw some green
Yeah,
for the first time in years, and then went through that run. Now I think that this is just my own
mhm,
take that I think that we overall, like recession wise, like I think we're headed there, and it's just a correction
oh
from
yeah,
everything that happened with COVID and all the money that they pumped in at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
And I do think, and I've been saying this for a while, which is part of the reason why we sold our house when COVID happened, and it was at that
Okay,
time it was a really good time for us to sell because
yeah, right,
property went up.
yeah,
And I'm still like, I'm not very certain about what's going to happen with everything. But I'll tell you this because you said, like, I'm not moving out of the US. After traveling, there was a lot of things that I missed about America. But now being back, I am also missing some of the things about not
right,
being here, especially,
right.
there's a lot of shit going on
Yes,
that is like, I don't like seeing that. And some, just it's, I don't know.
yeah.
But the grass is always greener on the other side, and
Right, right,
I think
right,
I'd rather be here than in some other places that are struggling with different stuff than what we struggle with. And at the end of
right.
the day, there's a lot of anti-American and
Mhm.
people who anti-capitalism. But
Right.
I am the son of a Cuban mother whose family fled Cuba when Fidel
Okay.
Castro took over,
So you
and I
understand, right,
understand what it's like when families get separated and countries get torn down because of capital or communism. That
right,
there are other extremes that are way worse than
right,
capitalism. And the cool thing about capitalism is that anybody can partake. And I
right.
never thought that I would have a business. I'm a terrible businessman, but I'm learning, and I have an LLC, and I made some money on my own. And like, to
Yeah,
be able to do that, and yeah, you can own businesses in other places, but there's no better place to start a business than the US. And people dream of the opportunity to come here to even, just get ahead in life by making a little more money and being able to purchase a home and things like that, where it's really rough in some places. and
right.
and I think
Yeah,
that people who have never left America don't realize that it's not all that great everywhere else. And I've only been to
right,
Europe, which is like,
right,
that's nice over there. There's
right.
places that are really bad. So
Right, right, right. Yeah, there's a few pockets. There's some areas. I think it's like I forget which city. It's like Singapore or like Tokyo or something. Madison Kana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her. She's kind of in the deaf
no.
community. She has a sister as well who's in the deaf community, but she was posting pictures and like she's like of how great this city that she was. I think it was Tokyo. I'm not sure, but everything looked like immaculate and everything was really clean. And she
It
posed
sounds
the
like
question.
Japan, yeah.
Yeah, she posed the question and she's like, "Why is it like this here?" And then we look at like San Francisco and like
Oh,
and so
yeah.
it's like she knew the answer. She's based kind of like that, but there was so many like comments in it. It was funny. But yeah, depending on what state you're in, yeah, it could definitely be a great place to start a business. I
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
want to start a business like in California though,
Yeah.
where the taxes are just so freaking high. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
But
Washington is probably not much better, but
right, yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Yeah, I'm not sure about, but anyhow, yeah, this is good talk though. It's fun.
No, definitely. It went over quite a bit, but I was having fun. So you know,
Yeah,
I hate to cut good conversations short for the sake of like making content, and that's why I
right,
also
right,
like to leave it natural and not have like a strong structure of things I wanted to ask, because I'm not
right.
just trying to, like, I want to repurpose these and cut them up if I can. And
Yeah,
if you're cool with that and you're okay with me
completely.
doing that, I'll share
Right.
them on my stuff, and tag you and tag your designcourse.com if people want to sign up and
Yeah.
learn about UI UX, check out
Yeah, you
Gary's
could just kinda
courses.
do
And
like what I Joe Rogan's YouTube channel does, like, they'll just upload, certain clips or whatever, or
yeah, yeah,
Jeremy
yeah,
clip, like, on a specific topic that we're talking about, yeah. However you choose to
exactly.
do it, I have no problem, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Then and definitely, of course, I'll link and shout out appropriately. And
Awesome.
is there anything you want to say before we cut the film?
No, I'm good to go.
Cool.
Alright.
Let me shut this off, and thanks for watching, everyone. All
Alright.
right, guys, I
See you
really
later.
hope that you enjoyed this interview. However, you may be consuming this, if it's on video on YouTube or on audio, I'm going to try to put these podcast style videos out there for people to be able to listen to them or watch them however they like. Also, if you have someone specifically that you think that I should reach out to try to get on the channel for an interview, please let me know in the comments. I'm really interested in just talking to different people from different walks of life. It doesn't have to necessarily be people who are around the programming and designing niche. It can be anyone, really, as long as they have an interesting story and are doing cool stuff and want to share what they're doing or talk about their experiences on my channel. I'm more than happy to have them on. So please let me know who you might want me to reach out to have on upcoming episodes, and I'll keep these going. I'm also going to try to make more smaller consumable clips from these long episodes so that people who may not have time to watch these whole videos can consume some of those valuable points that I feel came from these videos. All right, with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.